All right, folks, we're a couple minutes after 4, so we're just going to get underway here and welcome everyone to the, the 10th of June CVRD board meeting. And I want to begin by acknowledging that we gather today on the traditional unceded territories of the Comox First Nation and read call to action number 72, missing children and burial information. We call upon the federal government to allocate sufficient resources to the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation to allow it to develop and maintain the National Residential School Student Death Register established by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada. Okay, we'll take a motion now for adoption of minutes from May 27th. Any questions, corrections? Anyone opposed to adoption? All right, and that carries. And we have a follow-up on the Comox Valley Substance Use Strategy delegation at our previous meeting. Maybe I'll pass it just to James briefly to speak.
Thanks, Chair, and good afternoon to the board. So as is our practice, after delegations present to the board, typically no action is taken at that meeting, but we make a commitment to follow up on the next agenda with the opportunity to take any further action. In this instance, the Comox Valley Substance Use Strategy was sharing information and also requesting ongoing financial support. We have provided the delegation with information about the RD's Social Development Grant Program, and the I understand the Substance Use Strategy will undertake a look at that for potential funding, and the board may provide further direction on this matter if needed.
All right, thanks very much, CAO. And we'll move now into reports. And the first one is the Comox Valley Regional Community Wildfire Resiliency Plan for receipt. If I get a motion. Thanks very much. And I'll pass it over to James to introduce.
Great, thanks very much. Let's see, we have a guest approach the microphone, but first I'm going to introduce Bruce Green. Bruce is our Regional Rural Fire Chief. Bruce is online and will be, I think, introducing the report and then also introducing Kristen, who is at the microphone here in the room. So, Bruce, over to you.
Thanks, James. Through the CEO to the chair and the directors. As you're aware, in 2003, we applied for a Community Wildfire Resiliency Grant funding, which we have been, the Fire Smart Committee has been spending. The biggest item we had on that was to update our Community Wildfire Resiliency Plan. We have, through lots of work with our consultant and Fire Smart Committee and lots of working with other groups, have that completed. And I would like to introduce Kristen Story, our contractor who did the report for us, to provide a presentation to you, a 10-minute presentation to you about the report, and then we'll be open for questions after that. So over to you, Kristen.
You can just hit the button there at the base. Perfect.
Better? There we go. I'm glad to see you online, Bruce. I got your out of office reply and I was worried you were going to leave me here alone. All right, so thanks, Bruce. As mentioned, my name's Kristen Story, and I'm a forester biologist with Strategic Natural Resource Consultants, which is an Indigenous locally owned company. This project was supported by the team of foresters and GIS specialists and our associate Robin Clark, who's a forester who specializes in these types of projects. Over the past few years, this area has experienced increased summer temperatures, more wildfire starts, increasing forest fuels, and tree diebacks, root rot, increased use of urban forested areas by unhoused populations and recreational users. These factors, along with an increasing population, I think one number we had was 30% increase from 2011 to 2030, and the expansion of rural developments present a real risk of wildfire to the communities of the Comox Valley. Given this, it was a suitable time to update the Community Wildfire Resiliency Plan, CWRP, from the 2018 one that included the Comox First Nation and Regional District, but not the municipalities. The recent devastating California wildfires that burned over 16,000 hectares and wiped out neighborhoods is another reminder of the urgent need to develop comprehensive wildfire risk management strategies. We also had fire crews rallying out of our office today to go to Port Alberti. Right, so I'm going to do my best to summarize the content of the CWRP in the next 10 minutes. which includes an overview of the specific goals of the CWRP, the challenges of creating a wholesome and informative plan on Vancouver Island, the engagement process that was undertaken, the identification of the wildfire risk reduction areas or treatment units, and a quick overview of the recommendations. The CWRP was developed for the 5 regional partners, Comox First Nations, CVRD, Courtenay, Comox, and Cumberland, with the regional district boundary, within the regional district boundary, which includes Denman and Hornby Islands, with administrative support from the CVRD. Developing wildfire resilience involves balancing ecological priorities with human needs like safeguarding homes and infrastructure. Assessing wildfire resiliency requires a multifaceted approach to identify and understand the region's specific risks and vulnerabilities to wildfire. With these considerations in mind, the goal of the CWRP included increasing the awareness about the real wildfire risk to the communities, identifying the values at risk in the area, and we linked them to the BC Emergency Management System response goals. It included an overview of relevant plans and bylaws for each of the regional partners. We completed local fuel threat assessments out in the field. We identified treatment units for the implementation of wildfire risk reduction activities and worked to develop achievable action items that are in line with the 7 Fire Smart principles or disciplines. The long-term outcome of the CWRP development and implementation is to ensure that the regional partners have a plan moving forward to reach the key wildfire resiliency goals, which include completing our fuel management beyond that of the chipping program. So key challenges of this plan, which you all know, is the complex and fragmented nature of the land ownership in the Comox Valley. The majority of the forests are in the wildland-urban interface, or the WUI, and are largely composed of privately owned land, including private managed forest land, conservation covenant lands, and private woodlots. There's minimal crown land in the Comox Valley. Our numbers show that 70% of the WUI is private forest managed land. These lands have no available provincial data for the regional partners to evaluate the wildfire risk to the area. All private managed forest landowners and crown tenure holders are subject to the Wildfire Act and regulations. However, forest harvesting activities can leave varying volumes of coarse woody debris on the landscape, which can influence fire intensity and spread rate. Also, regenerating stands are not generally managed with the objective of fuel reduction, for example, pruning. The BC Wildfire Service did identify that the slash management practices in woodlots in general are a concern, and it was noted as an area of improvement during the Forest Practices Board last year as well. And that was the audit on Vancouver Island. Forests in the WUI also do not grow in nice uniform rectangles and often include various forest types. For example, different ages, densities. The Cumberland Community Forest is an example of that. These areas host a range of diverse species, medicinal plants, and habitats, which is reflected in their diverse management objectives. Another challenge is the use of the BC Wildfire Service CWRP template and guidance document, which creates large reports, which in this case was 147 pages. So for those who read it all, I appreciate that. These templates are not aligned with the Emergency Disaster Management Act, or EDMA, or the Indigenous engagement requirements. They also require really detailed maps that need large-scale printing. As you can see on the slide, you can't even see the map because that's a plotter-sized printer. They don't come out on 11.5 or 11 by 17 very well. Finally, the report has recommendations that aren't all eligible for grant funding. Even with funding, the regional partners are still responsible for internally covering costs to assess deficiencies of the initiatives. Provincial core funding to ensure sustainable administrative and staffing support is required to maintain these initiatives. A key aspect of this plan was to engage a broad and diverse group of interest holders, which was completed with emails, phone calls, virtual, in-person meetings. The majority of the engagement was completed in September to October 2024 by those that were prompt with their responses and requests for engagement. However, the project deadline was extended to ensure that we could connect with and incorporate input from all of the identified interest holders. For Courtney, Comox, Cumberland, engagement included the fire department, the planning, the parks, the recs departments. Mosaic and Manulife were continuing to engage. Unfortunately, they were too late to include any meaningful engagement before the submission deadline we needed for the 2025 grant application. And we did connect with Island Trust in Mount Washington, but again, we're not able to set up meetings before the deadlines. We also presented and attended at 3 regional Fire Smart Committee meetings, and we attended and presented at the recent Watershed, Wildfire, Changing Forest, and Landscape Symposium in Cumberland. So that's just a list of everybody that we engaged with. Again, another large part of this project was to capture the diverse values at risk in the Comox Valley. So we also linked them to the BC emergency response goals. So the first is the health and safety of all responders and the public. So we identified areas with limited evacuation routes like Mount Washington, or areas with higher fuel type risks like the Islands or the Sand Pines neighborhood. Second is reduce suffering and protect human health. So this includes impacts from poor air quality, mental health concerns on evacuees, other impacts to vulnerable populations, and loss of medicinal plants. Third in the list is to protect critical infrastructure. It's my understanding the definition of critical infrastructure has not been clearly defined or aligned by the province yet under EDMA, but generally includes infrastructure, utilities, other key support structures, and buildings like the one we're in now. Fourth is to protect drinking water quality in community watersheds, which should also be considered critical infrastructure, and includes the designated drinking watersheds by the province and the other non-designated drinking watersheds. Protecting property includes residential properties, archaeological and culturally significant sites, or other heritage sites. Protecting the environment is also a response goal and includes the many conservation areas, species at risk, sensitive ecosystems, parks, and other natural assets in the valley. Finally, reducing economic and social loss. So there's other values at risk from wildfires, such as timber values, non-forest timber products like mushrooms, recreation services like pools and park areas, and agricultural areas. So we completed field plots out there to determine the local wildfire fuel threat rating, which we did over 100 of, and for input from the fire departments and parks departments in for each of the regional partners. And we developed a list of 24 recommended treatment units, which are broken down on the slide there for each of the partners, the number of areas. As already mentioned, the WUI includes a diverse range of values at risk with diverse conservation and protection management objectives that may be impacted by fuel treatment activities. As such, the report represents a wide range of risk reduction activities for consideration. What they would call treatment units, which include stand tending. So those are pruning to increase the fuel gap, debris management to reduce surface fuel loading, and potentially thinning to create breaks in the canopy. You can remove invasive species. You can reduce anthropogenic risks, like putting up signage, restricting access, or restricting wildfires. You can determine or consider assigning or enhancing natural asset ratings, or where the risk to impact environmental values outweighs the wildfire threat, no action may be appropriate. The recommendation is that a multidisciplinary team completes a field visit to the units to review the management objectives, fuel threat risk, and other considerations to provide input on the appropriate wildfire risk reduction activity. All right. So key recommendations There's a fairly hefty table in the report. So there's 52 action items in total, which are listed table 1, page 11 of the report, which I'm sure you guys have enjoyed reading all 147 pages of. Key recommendations include increasing the community's capacity and understanding of the real wildfire risk to coastal communities through education, incorporating fire smart principles into aligned local and regional plans and bylaws, including new residential or commercial developments that may occur in the municipalities or the regional district. To assess and prioritize the wildfire risk reduction activities in the identified treatment units, and to decide upon and socialize terminology in the communities to better describe the outcome of fuel treatments, for example, stand tending, and to consider creating demonstration forests and public education campaigns. Another recommendation is to have greater collaboration within and across administrative boundaries to facilitate interagency data sharing and planning for wildfire preparedness, response, and recovery. Along the same lines, continuing to pursue collaborative relationships, which includes but is not limited to private managed forest land holders, land trusts, conservancies, including Island Trust, and woodlots to gain a complete picture of the wildfire risk environment in the Comox Valley. And again, provincial core funding, multi-year funding is needed to ensure the sustainable administrative and staffing support to maintain these initiatives and to create wildfire resilient communities. So just want to say thank you very much for your time and providing us the opportunity to be a part of such an important project.
All right, thanks, Kristen. Are you open for questions?
I will, but I'll lob them to Bruce if I can't answer them.
Fair enough. Okay, we'll start with Director Grieve. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Just a small point, but when you talk about private managed forest lands, don't you mean private forest lands?
Yes, that's just under the definition
Because-
of the.
Yeah, because there is a difference and they get it confused. Our friends in the interior have no idea what we face here with this private forest lands that were given away.
Yeah.
And you're saying that the private forest companies didn't cooperate?
They did cooperate. They just couldn't, they didn't meet the deadline we had in terms of getting information in time to incorporate into the report. And then I can't comment on what has happened since. If Bruce wants to comment on that.
So did you receive the information eventually, just past deadline? Is that what happened?
We did receive some. I'll let Bruce answer.
So Director Grieve, unfortunately, the private forest lands have no obligation to share any data with us. And to this date, and that's a huge, as you mentioned, in our area and all of Vancouver Island, it's a huge problem. And the government is trying their best to make that happen, but they are no under obligation to, and nor do they. That being
Sure, they
said,
are. Okay. Yeah,
they are
sure.
a good community partner, and they are working with us to try and mitigate some of those risks.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks. Well, Director Arbor next.
Yeah, thanks for reporting back in such comprehensive work. I know that in area, I mean, I really agree with a lot of the recommendation and also focusing on the things that we can control. So when we talk about Mosaic and the private forest lands, we've had difficulty working with them at all levels. So it's not a good focus for us to necessarily think about that. And also when you think about fire behavior on the coast, I think looking at our more immediate communities is more fruitful. So last month I got to tour the stand around on Hornby that we did, which was fabulous. I mean, we had a bit of a forestry conference a couple years ago with Laurie Daniels and others that came over and just talking about the things that a community can actually do, not to eliminate fire risk, but to reduce its impacts or its scope. And with very, I mean, there was effort involved, but not that much effort. You know, you could tell that they've made a significant difference in that area where all of our community buildings are. to reduce the intensity of a potential fire. So since then, I've talked to folks in Union Bay and Fanny Bay about it. Everybody wants it. Everybody wants us to start moving that kind of fire smarting at the community level, because the last 15 years we've done a great job with individual homeowner. But I think taking that next step of looking at more neighborhood community-based treatments around some of those forest stands. And at least if we're not going to treat them, for our residents to understand what could be done. Because that education can go a long way, because people might start over time, saying, why don't we, so that it's not all on our shoulders. I think to build that education and community around what we can do is also important. So anyways, I'm really excited about this work, and I think you did really well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. And Director Brown.
Thanks. I'm also really excited about this work. And we just got to spend the day with Minister Green, who was introduced to the ENN land grant in Cumberland. And so she now is fully briefed on the situation we face. And I note in the summary of the report, one of the key challenges is that private managed forest land data. And so I think there's a UBCM option here for us. If CBRD doesn't want to do that, Cumberland will certainly be setting up a meeting with the Ministry of Forests. But I think we need to continue to push the review of the Act. And this is one of the avenues that we can do that, because we need data in order to manage the resiliency and safety of our drinking water systems, and they are contained within private managed forest land. So long way of saying, I think we need to do some further advocacy on this to the province. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Director Brown. I think that'll go on the agenda for my next meeting with James, so we'll take that into consideration. I'm not seeing any further questions, so thanks so much for this very comprehensive.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, have a great evening.
You too.
All right, so the next item is the reconciliation advisory table milestone update. Oh, sorry, there was a motion for receipt and the recommendation. Jumping ahead. Okay, so anyone opposed to receipt? Okay, move to recommendation, seconded by Grant. Any questions or discussion on the recommendation? Anyone opposed to the recommendation? Perfect, okay, and that carries. And now we go to the reconciliation advisory table milestone update. And I did see Nick Chowdhury in the audience. They're right there. Perfect, but I'll first hand it over to our CAO to set things up. Good to see you, Nick.
Thanks, Chair. I'd like to introduce Christian Weil, our Senior Manager of Strategic Initiatives, who will introduce the report. And as you mentioned, Nick Chowdhury is here to present also. This is in regards to the reconciliation advisory table. Christian, over to you.
Great. Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to introduce this report, which provides an update on the activities of the Reconciliation Advisory Table and shares the 2025 milestone report. Joining me today is Nick Chowdhury. He is the facilitator of the advisory table. He's been working with the local governments for the past 3 years to establish the table in a respective way. And he led the outreach to bring members into the circle and created a safe space for us to gather together. Nick's here today on behalf of the advisory table members, and I'll just ask him to introduce himself, and then we're here to take your questions. Thank you.
Good to see you all again. As noted, Nick Chowdhury. I'm a member of the Dunuknuk First Nation. This isn't the first time I've joined all of you in this manner, so it's good to be back again and to support the delivery of the report.
Okay, I wasn't sure if there's anything further you wanted to say, Christiane, but any questions on the report? Director Hillian, thanks.
Thanks, Chair. First of all, it was good to see the reports, and thank you for the work that has been done. I'd like to applaud you for your patience, because I think people like me would have a tendency to want to move things like this along a lot faster, which isn't always the best way to do things. But it seems that where things are sitting is for the table to be able to respond to requests from local government for advice and assistance and such. I'm just wondering whether we've ever gotten any further with the idea of some public education events that were discussed several years ago. You know, whether there was any kind of consensus on moving ahead with something like that. And I do have one other question that I'll ask after that.
That was a great piece of the work that I've been waiting for and waiting patiently. We are at a place now where we started discussing that, and we're looking at how to build an approach to bring that out in a way that will inform community as well as anyone who's interested in being involved. So we've got a lot of planning ahead of us, but the energy in the last session we had, just kind of grasping onto that idea again and going, okay, now we're feeling like we can start doing something with this. It's an amazing place and time to be working with the group.
Yeah, thanks. Part of that initiative came out of some of the sessions that this board had going back probably 6 or more years ago now with Jesse Morin on the anthropological history of the region. And I think it struck a lot of us that the average citizen, even though we talk about people being here from time immemorial, have no idea of the actual evidence, the archaeological evidence that exists to demonstrate that, and the number of Indigenous people who lived here compared to the population, say, in the Comox Valley today. So I think that was where some of that came from, and so I appreciate that that's moving forward. The other question I had, and I apologize if this seems crass, I've never fully understood how the system of compensation works, and so it appeared that what elders were able to get for taking part was significantly more than regular Indigenous members who took part, and I just, it would be helpful to understand how that is determined.
Part of that is in how we work with the elders and recognizing what they bring to the engagement. We lean on them, so to say, more so than any other participant in the group. They not only open up our sessions and conclude them, but if there were any points where questions seemed odd or there was tension or discomfort around a topic, they are, without even asking, they're the ones who come forward and begin to say, okay, how do we work through this? And they guide us, they lead us. It's a manner of being that was brought into us as we grew, and we couldn't underestimate the value of having elders present in any other work that I do. When we approach engagement and look to conflict potential and how do we manage resolution, before anyone wants to start talking about building a process, I ask them, can we consider an Indigenous approach and involve elders and have them present? So considering the multitude of ways that they not only support us, but help us with the work, it's been customary for many of us running our own organizations or business or engagement to have that level of compensation higher for elders because they know and they're expecting to be more readily involved and engaged in the work.
Thanks very much. Appreciate that.
All right, thanks, and Director Brown.
Thanks, and thanks so much for this work. I'm relatively new to this committee, I guess it's a committee or advisory table. Are the same people there all the time, or do different people come and form the table at different times? Is my first question. And then this is ongoing work. Is it like, how often are you gathering?
I'll start at the end and work back. So typically right now we're meeting quarterly. Initially, when we were doing the planning and the relationship building and establishing what needed to get put in place, we were meeting more frequently. But we recognize that as we start to do the work, there is needed space in between for James, Christiane, myself, and others to plan what's going to happen in the next section. Who do we need to engage if they're not regularly attending these? As far as attendance, the people present are usually the same ones. Some of them may have more busy schedules and have someone, they'll let us know, okay, I'm going to keep this person up to date and they may come in my place. We just recently had one member say that they couldn't engage any further and we're going to reach out to the organization and just look for a replacement. Another case we've seen is where board members changed. So typically the groups, organizations, or societies are typically staying pretty commonly the same. Just occasionally the faces are updated.
Okay, great. So that's providing some consistency, but also allowing for new input should it be needed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we also have space for other elders or youth when word gets around and someone wants to see what's happening, or if a group wants to bring a youth member or another elder in.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, and I think we have a motion for receipt on the table. So anyone opposed to receipt? And that carries, and there's a recommendation. Moved and seconded. Thanks very much. Any questions on that? Anyone opposed to the recommendation? And that carries. Thanks so much. Good to see you, Nick. Thank you. Next item, elected officials forum, EOC follow-up summary, and a motion for receipt, please. Thank you very much. And I'll pass it over to CAO.
Thank you, Chair. Gary McIntyre, our emergency planning coordinator for the Comox Valley Emergency Management, is here in the room to introduce this report and support the discussion to follow. So Carrie, over to you.
Thank you for having me today. I'm pleased to be able to provide this report on behalf of Comox Valley Emergency Management Service. And I guess the last time we probably all saw each other was on maybe January 23rd, 2025, when we were all in this room at the elected officials forum focused on the Regional Emergency Operations Center. And part of the Emergency and Disaster Management Act, which was introduced in 2023, is to strengthen the emergency management across BC by requiring local governments to coordinate with Indigenous governing bodies and to enhance multi-jurisdictional collaboration. And CVEM's role is providing that guidance and coordination across the 4 pillars, which is preparedness, response, recovery, mitigation, and also to integrate the Indigenous engagement requirement principles to foster that meaningful engagement in a decision-making context. So we're providing these options to you based on feedback from staff, and that includes the liaisons to CVEM, which are the designates from the 5 jurisdictions that support the service from an operational and planning context, but also from the feedback and input that you so kindly provided us at the forum and in the follow-up survey. So happy to offer some of those options up front to you right now, or I'll pause to see if there's any questions first. Okay, so some of the 5 key options we're recommending for establishing a Regional Emergency Operations Center Policy Group Advisory Committee. I think I'm going to create an acronym for that. is to create a regional EOC policy group committee to define multi-jurisdictional roles, responsibilities, and coordination between governments and emergency management staff, or EOC staff as well. We're also suggesting to develop a comprehensive policy framework to improve cross-jurisdictional collaboration, clarify decision-making processes, and ensure effective emergency responses through the Emergency Operations Center, conduct annual role clarification workshops for elected officials and key staff to strengthen understanding of responsibilities in those crisis situations, review and align emergency management policies across jurisdictions to eliminate inconsistencies and enhance coordination around decision-making, and to provide that technical and staff support to facilitate committee meetings, integrate policies into training programs, and improve that overall crisis communication strategy that would be coming out of the Emergency Operations Center.
All right, thanks, Carrie. Just looking, and I'll go to Director Brown.
Thank you. Thanks so much for this follow-up. That was a great session, and the report summarizes it very nicely. I really like all of the suggestions. I'm just wondering, it seems like a lot for a small team, and wondering whether that list is prioritized, or like, how are we gonna do all that? I guess is my question. Do you have any insight on that? Or is there timing associated with the different suggestions?
Thank you, Mayor Brown. To answer your question through the chair, of course, we wouldn't be expecting that to happen by, fall of 2025 or anything. We're looking at a staggered approach. We are still waiting for the confirmation on the regulations for local authorities. That's supposed to be coming out in the fall. So we'd be looking at this over a 2-year period, possibly more, and certainly a phased approach, working with the staff that are already connected to the CVEM service, but also looking for guidance from the CAOs, which is the administration committee for CVEM, on what that looks like in terms of leaning on other resources from our already stretched resources in our local governments and for KFN as well.
Awesome, thank you.
Right, we're still on receipt, and anyone opposed to receipt? And that carries, and there's a recommendation if someone cares to move it. Okay, thanks very much. Brown and Brandt and Morin. Any questions or comments on the recommendation? Anyone opposed? And that carries. Thanks so much, Carrie.
Thank you for your
Good to see you. Next, we have minutes for the Comox Valley Transit Management Advisory Committee from March 11th. Thank you. Seconded. Any questions on those? Anyone opposed to receipt? That carries. And then Regional Parks and Trails from May 27th. Thank you very much. Any questions on those? Any corrections? Okay, anyone opposed? And that carries. And the ESC, and I believe there's an addendum here which was added earlier today, and I'd maybe ask for a motion to move the addendum. And so it's moved in its place in the agenda and accepted. Anyone opposed to that? Okay, that carries. And so, yeah, thank you. Move the recommendation number 1. Okay, any questions on that? Director Arbor.
Sorry, I missed that addendum. It was added today, you say?
Via email.
Okay.
We can take a second one.
Yeah, I would like to be able to read it. I don't know if you can just table it for a couple of items and come back to it.
Sure,
if that's okay for the board.
Happy to do that. Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right. So we'll move to it's bylaws and resolutions. Or we actually, no, it's a good point. We'll go to recommendation 2 then. So, okay, thank you. And it's a vote of the areas. Any questions on recommendation 2? Anyone opposed? That carries. Recommendation 3. Thank you. That's been moved, seconded. Appreciate that. It's also the areas. Anyone opposed to recommendation 3? And Director Harvey, your light is just on from before. That's fine. I just want to make sure I'm not missing you. Okay, recommendation 4. Thank you. Any questions on 4th? It's also the areas. Anyone opposed? Okay, that carries, and then on to 5. All right, and thank you. Any questions? Anyone opposed? That carries. Are you in a position to, we'll go back to recommendation number 1. Was that, I mean, yeah, I think, thank you. Okay, and Director Harper, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. We had a few applications yesterday that had some opposition, and this was one of them. And I just want to acknowledge the addendum we received, who's a neighbor immediately next to the property in question. And all I would say to address that particular comment, this comment, prefer if there was no building at all, but I do believe that they are allowed to build a secondary suite, and I realized it will have some impact on that immediate neighbor, but I don't think that that variance, if moving that building elsewhere without the variance would satisfy this homeowner. So I would still vote in favor of this recommendation. Thank you.
So this is a vote of the areas. Appreciate your views, Director Harper. And so anyone opposed? And that carries. And now we're on to bylaws and resolutions. So for first and second reading, bylaw number 520, 2019. Thank you. Thanks very much. Vote of the areas. Are there any questions on that? Comments? Anyone opposed? And now for adoption, thank you. This is bylaw number 865, emergency shelter and supportive housing land acquisition service establishment bylaw. Any questions on that? Anyone opposed? That carries. Recommendation for bylaw 867. This is also for final adoption. So okay, thank you very much. Moved in second. This is a vote of the areas. Any questions? Anyone opposed? And that carries. Bylaw number 873, Black Creek Oyster Bay Fire Protection Local Service Area Conversion Establishment Bylaw. Okay, this is a vote of all directors. Any questions? Anyone opposed? That carries. Bylaw number 874, Comox Valley Water Conservation Bylaw 2010, Amendment number 10 for final adoption. And this is, thank you very much. The vote of everyone except for Cumberland. Sorry, Vicky. All right, anyone opposed? All right, and that carries. And then got bylaw number 875, Comox Valley Rec Complex Fees and Charges Bylaw, Amendment number 10. It's a vote of the areas. Thank you very much. Someone second that? Thank you. Anyone opposed to adoption? All right, and it's not even 10 to 5, but we appear to have chewed through the entire agenda. So move termination. Thanks, everyone.